So now I will talk about week 3 notes. So stories are told in every culture and often teach a normal moral lesson to young children. Fables are similar but often set examples for people to live by or describe what to do when in a dangerous situation. They can also be a part of traditions, help to preserve ways of life, or explain mysteries. Storytelling takes many different forms such as the tall tales and folk tales. These are for entertainment or to discuss problems or encountered in life. Both are also a form of cultural preservation, a way to communicate morals, values to the next generation. Stories can also be a form of social control over certain activities or customs that are not allowed in a society. A fable becomes a tradition by being retold and accepted by others in the community. Different cultures have very similar stories sharing common themes. One of the most common themes is a battle between good and evil. Another is the story of the quest. The quest often takes the character of distant lands filled with real life situations and opportunities, hardships and headaches. In both these types of stories, the reader is introduced to the anthropological concept known as the other. What exactly is the other? The other is a term that has been used to describe people whose customs, beliefs, or behaviors are different from one one's. So let's move to the next topic, that is people throughout recorded history have relied on storytelling as a way to share cultural details. When early anthropologists studied people from other civilizations, they relied on written accounts and opinions of others. They presented facts and developed their stories about other cultures based solely on information gathered by others. These scholars do not have any direct contact with people they were studying. The approach has to come to be known as armchair anthropology. Simply put, if a culture is viewed from a distance as a view from armchair, the anthropologist tends to measure that culture from his or her own vantage point to and draw comparisons that place anthropologist's culture as superior to the one being studied. The point of view is also called anthropocentrism. Anthropocentrism is an attitude based on the idea that one's own group of culture is better than any other. Early anthropological studies often presented an bias on anthropocentric interpretation of the human condition. For example, ideas about racism superiority emerged as a result of studying the cultures that were encountered during the colonial era. During the colonial era from the 16th century to the mid 20th century, European countries like Britain, France, Germany, Belgium, Dutch Republic, Spain or Portugal asserted control of land, land like Asia, Africa and Americas and people. European ideas of wrong and right were used as a measuring stick to judge the way that people in different cultures lived. Those other cultures were considered primitive, which was an anthropocentrism term of people who were non-European. It is also negative term suggestion that indigenous culture had a lack of technological advancement, colonized that they were superior to other in every way. The armchair approach as a way to study cultural change when scholars such as Bronislaw Malosevicki, Alfred Radisson Brown, Franz Boas, and Margaret Mead took the field and studied by being participants and observers. As they did, fieldwork became the most important tool anthropologists used to understand the complex whole of culture. Bronislaw Malosevicki, a Polish anthropologist, was greatly influenced by the work of Fraser. However, unlikely the armchair anthropology approach Fraser using in writing The Golden Bough, Malosevicki used more innovative anthropographic techniques, and his fieldwork took him off the veranda to study different cultures. The off-the-veranda approach is different from armchair anthropology because it includes active participant observation, traveling to a location, living among people, and observing their day-to-day lives. European anthropologists developed theories of functionalism to explain how social institutions contribute to the organization of society and the maintenance of social order. Bronson law Mansley believed that the cultural traditions were developed as a response to specific human needs such as food, comfort, safety, knowledge, reproduction, and economic livelihood. One function of education in institutes like schools, for instance, is to provide knowledge that prepares people to obtain jobs and make contribution to society, although he preferred the term structure and functionalism. The British anthropologist A.R. Radcliffe Brown was also interested in a way that social structures functionalize to maintain social stability in a society over time. He suggested that in many societies, it was a family that served as the most important social structure because family relationships determine much about an individual's social, political, and economical relationship, and this pattern was repeated from one generation to next. In a family unit in which the father is the breadwinner and the mother stay home to raise the children, and social economic roles of both the husband and the wife will be largely defined by the specific responsibility within the family. If their family grow up to follow the same arrangement, these social roles will be continued in the next generation. During the development of anthropology in North America, Canada, United States, and Mexico, the significant contribution made by the American schools of anthropology in the 19th and 20th century was the concept of cultural relativism, which is the idea that cultures cannot be objectively understood since all humans see the world through the lens of their own culture. Cultural relativism is different than anthropocentrism because it emphasizes understanding culture from an insider view. The focus on culture, along with the idea of cultural relativism, the distance between cultural anthropology in the United States from social anthropology in Europe. The participant observation method of fieldwork was a revolutionary change to the practice of anthropology, but at the same time it presented problems that needed to be overcome. The challenge was to move away from anthropocentrism, race stereotypes, and colonial attitudes, and to move forward by encouraging anthropologists to maintain high ethical standards and open minds. As anthropologists developed more concept of culture, they also gained a greater understanding of the ethical challenges associated with the anthropological research. Because participant observation fieldwork brings anthropologists into a close relationship with the people of they study. Many complicated issues can arise. Cultural relativism is a perspective that encourages anthropologists to show respect to members of other cultures, which was not until after World War II that the profession of anthropology recognized the need to develop formal standards of professional conduct. The Nuremberg trials, which began in 1945 in Nuremberg, Germany, and were conducted under the directions of France and Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, and the United States, prosecuted members of the Nazi regime of war crimes. In addition to military and political figures, physicians and scientists were also produced for the numerical human experimentation and mass murder. The trials demonstrated that physicians and other scientists could be dangerous if they used their skills for their disease or exploitative goals. The code that emerged from the trials was considered as a landmark document in medical research ethics. It established the principle of the ethical treatment of the human subjects involved in any medical or scientific research. Many universities adopted principles from the Nuremberg Code to write ethical guidelines for the treatments of human subjects. Anthropologists and studies who work in universities where these guidelines exist are obliged to follow these rules.